Have you ever felt betrayed by the person you trusted the most? What would you do if your partner cheated on you during your darkest times? This video delves into a story that's as shocking as heartbreaking. A man battling a serious health issue discovers his wife's unforgivable betrayal. But that's not all. He takes an unexpected turn that leaves everyone stunned. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss the devastating conclusion of this real-life drama. My wife cheated while I was having mental health struggles, so I made sure to get at her. I'm a 37-year-old man who has been married to my 36-year-old wife for 9 years, but we've known each other since high school. Needless to say, she's one of the people who knows me best, and I know a lot about her, having grown into adulthood together. For the sake of telling the story publicly, let's call her Daphne. It breaks my heart to even need to ask for advice on this matter, but I honestly don't know what to do and my mental state isn't helping at all. I might need to give you a bit of background so you can understand things better. I had a very rough childhood, to say the least. I grew up with a drug-addicted mother and a great father who met his end due to junkie friends of my mother's. I was the one who found him and had to call 911, and I don't know if I can ever fully appreciate the extent to which that scarred me. To be honest, I grew up with a strong resentment for my mother and women in general. I entered foster care with a very kind foster family. While I was an unnecessary jerk to many people in the house, their love eventually softened me. Despite this, I still felt a lot of pain. Naturally, I began seeing a therapist early in my life because I had been dealing with a variety of mental health issues. Still, I always tried to remain positive and fight through them. Meeting Daphne in high school was also a major source of happiness for me, and we were friends for several years before we became romantically involved. Again, I was extremely resentful of women, and having a healthy relationship with Daphne helped me get out of it. We both graduated from high school and attended the same college, where we graduated again. Everyone could tell we'd end up together. Still, to be the edgy young adult I used to be, I'd deny it and pretend I was unaware of the possibility of ending up with her. Around 2 years after graduating from college, I officially asked her to be my girlfriend. I proposed to her a year later, and we were married 9 years ago. Daphne was not present during the most difficult times of my life. Still, she was always aware of my mental health issues and witnessed some of my most difficult battles. I've always apologized for how I might treat her in those moments or how she needs to baby me, but she's always been so kind and has always said that she doesn't mind. At several points in our relationship, I even asked her if she was sure she wanted to be burdened with me and my problems. Still, she always said yes and that she'd go far with me. I believe that provides enough context for you to understand the situation. The real problem began about 4 months ago when I was dealing with a severe bout of depression. To be honest, no matter how far I've come in life, some of the events of the past still have a strong hold on me, and it's difficult to let go of them entirely. Bad episodes have become less frequent and farther apart as I've gotten older. This episode lasted about 5 days. Daphne is usually as close to me as possible, but something was different this time. She hung around for the first 2 days, but halfway through the third she appeared cold and told me she had something to do. I wasn't ready to inquire about it, so she left and returned much later. The same thing happened for the next 2 days, and I noticed she returned around 1 a.m. On the final day, I didn't say much about it because of how I felt then. Once I was out of the episode, I reflected on her behavior objectively. I've known her for about 2 decades, which was extremely unusual for her. Because you believe you know people, cheating did not come to mind, correct? I considered bringing it up but decided to let it go, which was probably bad. About 2 months later, I had a terrible day and she disappeared halfway through. This made the day worse because Daphne avoided me, which was unusual. Fortunately, this was just a bad day and not a true episode of depression, so I recovered by the end of the day. When she came home, I asked where she had been, not in an accusatory tone. Still, she responded very defensively, asking why I approached her like that. I was shocked because I was sure I hadn't spoken unkindly. She seemed ready to explode, so I took a breath and asked again calmly. She stared at me angrily for about 10 seconds before revealing that she had a date with her girls that she had completely forgotten about. Her response sounded suspicious, so I mentioned that the previous time I was depressed and that she was absent, but she said she had no idea what I was talking about. To be fair, it had been more than 2 months, and I didn't want to call her a liar. However, a pattern was emerging in my mind. Even when things appeared to be going well between us, I knew she was hiding something. When Daphne vanished for the 3rd time, and I wasn't having a bad day, I knew something was wrong. When she returned home, I didn't bring up her absence. Instead, I talked about mundane topics. She didn't lash out like she had before. I hoped she would say something about where she had been, but she didn't. At that point, I realized I needed to find out where she was going. I've always been a tech-savvy person who can navigate an Android phone fairly well. When my wife entered the shower without her phone, I went to Google Maps to check her location history. That night, she visited a bar before going to a residential address. When I looked into her previous disappearances, I noticed a similar pattern. She went to the same bar but ended up at a different house. I took pictures of everything on my phone to research the addresses she was going to. I needed to know if those addresses belonged to any of her friends to feel better. I was about to check the dates for the first time she disappeared when I heard her wrapping up in the bathroom, so I stopped. The uncertainty was driving me crazy. I wasn't sure how I would find the information I needed based on those addresses alone, but I knew it was the only way to get closure. There were 2 possibilities. Either my wife was cheating on me or she was truly going out with her friends. Going out to bars and ending up at someone's home could align with what she told me, but it could also mean she was going out to bars and going home with random men. She eventually came out of the bathroom, and we did some small talk, which I had to struggle through, and she went to bed. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand, and I gently pry it out. My heart was racing, but she didn't wake up. After some mental calculations, I determined the first day she disappeared. It was the same on all 3 days. She went to the same address after the bar on 2 occasions. At that point, I understood what I needed to do. I considered hiring a private investigator to determine who lived at the addresses. Still, I realized there was a simpler solution. I only needed to set her up. The following weekend, I tried to fake being in a mood, which was more difficult than expected, given all my practice. Daphne went to her room, dressed, and slipped out of the house around 6 p.m., just as I had planned. A few minutes later, I followed her in a cartoonish disguise of sunglasses, a jacket, and a baseball cap. I went straight to the bar, where I knew she was going. I hoped she didn't recognize me, or my plan would never work again. I walked into the bar and noticed her sitting alone with a drink already ordered. I found a spot to sit where she wouldn't notice me, and I waited. Eventually, someone sat beside her. They sat in silence for a bit before he said something, and from their body language, it seemed they didn't know each other. If I had come in about 10 minutes later, I might have thought they were close friends because of the way they were laughing and because she kept touching him. I felt I had seen enough but used self-control to see how things would play out. Some of me still hoped her friends would show up and the guy was just a time filler. But no. They eventually stood up and exited the bar together after about an hour and several drinks. I followed them 3 blocks to an apartment building. At that point, I felt like I was going crazy. This did not help someone who already admits to having a fragile psyche. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I decided to wait across from the apartment building. I would wait until she came out, take a picture, and then go home. That was my plan until I saw her walk out with the guy. I took several photos of them as they stood before the building's well-lit entrance, but my last was of them kissing goodbye. I stormed across the street despite my better judgment. To be honest, I was very uncomposed. You can't blame me, though. I can barely remember what I said, but I remember shouting and yelling, asking her how she could do that to me, saying that I knew she was up to no good, and so on. I was almost about to slug the guy beside her with the stupid, baffled look on his face before she told him to go back to his house, and he obeyed immediately. We stood there, staring at each other when it was just me and her. I know I was shaking with rage and battling with a lot of very messed up thoughts. You know what it's like to realize that you can never really trust anyone and that anyone can betray you. When all these thoughts were pouring through my head, I asked her why. "I'm tired of dealing with your depression and moods. It's exhausting. I needed happiness," she stated. She didn't think much before letting that out, and honestly, her words left me broken. Even now, a few days later, the words still sting. It was exactly what I was trying to avoid when I asked her if she wanted to do something serious with me, because I've always known I'd be plagued by depression. But she appeared to accept me for who I was and am. I had just started walking away at that point. It took me over an hour to return home because I wandered the streets aimlessly. It was dangerous, but a part of me wanted to be hurt. Honestly, maybe the pain could end, or something would happen to help me forget about everything. Looking back, that was a stupid thought, but I understand where it came from. By the time I got back to the house, Daphne was there. I guess she had enough time to realize how stupid her words were. She started to beg as soon as she saw me, but I said nothing. I went straight to her room and locked the door because seeing her infuriated me. I wanted to tell her to get out of the house, but at the same time I didn't want to spare a word for her. I barely slept, but I didn't see her the next morning. I was glad I didn't need to interact with her and didn't care where she was. I still don't know where she is or where she's been, and I don't care. At this point, I need to hurt her. Because I've been through so many traumas, I've lived my life in pain. Having the person I thought was my safe space add to it was one of the most painful experiences I've had. I'll read every single comment left here because I have nothing better to do, but I want to know how I can hurt her in the same way that she has hurt me. I believe that is the only thing that will help me feel some sense of closure at this point, as I have no desire to cheat back. Limits to marital patience and the human capacity for betrayal. Just when you think you're having a bad day, your wife's side quest for happiness becomes the main plot. It's almost poetic how her quest for happiness involves stumbling into the arms of a stranger at a bar. But seriously, as for making her hurt the way she made you hurt, remember that nothing screams poetic justice quite like hitting the reset button on your life. Move on. Find someone who understands that depression isn't just a phase, and live your best life. After all, living well is the best revenge. And maybe, just maybe, making her watch you do it from afar, realizing what she threw away for a few cheap thrills at a bar. Focus on your mental health, surround yourself with supportive people, and give yourself time to heal. Seek therapy if necessary, and rebuild your life around positive and understanding influences. Turning your pain into a motivation for personal growth and happiness is far more rewarding than seeking vengeance. I'd like to thank everyone who helped me with my previous post. Honestly, it was difficult to open up so much and expose all of my flaws. Still, most of the comments were extremely kind and supportive, for which I am grateful. It's been a while since my last post, but I'm happy to report that things are much better for me now, and I used a lot of the advice you all gave to plan my next move as best I could. The first thing I did was call her over to talk. She had no idea, but I'd already spoken with the divorce attorney and knew there was no way to fix what we had. I admit that I would have been foolish enough if she had only cheated on me once. Still, after cheating on me with what I assumed were multiple people, as well as the horrible words she said to me, I knew there was no turning back. I would never be able to love this woman again. When she arrived at my house, I asked her to sit down, and she did. I asked her how many people she had cheated on me with, and she initially said just one. But I kept pressing, telling her that I knew more than she thought I did. She repeatedly insisted it was just one person, but I bluffed and told her I'd hired a private investigator. I mentioned one address and then another, and that's when she finally decided to let loose that she had slept with 3 people. I don't know if that was true, but it was all I needed to hear. At that point, I handed her the divorce papers and told her that I couldn't live with her anymore. She started begging and pleading, which wasn't unexpected. Still, I think she realized it was pointless, and she gave up after a bit. She walked out with the papers, and I drank for the rest of the day. Eventually, we got to the whole divorce proceeding stage, and I was glad that I had a bit of evidence pointing to the fact that she was unfaithful, which helped swing things in my favor. Unsurprisingly, my mental health was brought up in the discussion, with much emphasis placed on how difficult it was to live with me. To be honest, things got really dirty at that point, and it was horrible to hear my struggles weaponized in that way. Of course, I believe most divorces are messy based on what I've seen in movies. I don't want to bore you with the details, but it dragged on for quite some time. In the end, her lawyer was able to make it appear that dealing with me and my mental health had been a major struggle for her, which I admit isn't easy. Still, it wasn't allowed as an excuse for infidelity. For the most part, things worked in my favor. I was able to avoid paying alimony, and I gave up our apartment because it would bring back too many bad memories. However, I got the car, which would undoubtedly be more useful than the house. Weeks later, after the divorce, once I had settled into my new place, I made sure to tell every single person who knew both of us that Daphne and I were splitting up. I went into detail, telling no lies and exposing her for cheating on me because of my depressive episodes. I texted the same message to friends, family, co-workers I knew, and even our former landlord. I needed to make sure everyone knew she was a scumbag so that if they ever got involved with her again, they'd know what they were getting themselves into. She called me an hour later and cursed me out for about 10 minutes straight, but I just let her vent before hanging up the phone on her. I haven't spoken to Daphne since she called me to yell every expletive in the book. Still, a coworker responded to a message I sent saying that she's been having trouble with workplace gossip and that I should consider recanting my statement to help her. I left her on hold. I don't think I'm going to have relationships anymore. There's too much fear in me now as to the ways a woman can hurt me, and I'm not excited to discover a new one. Maybe I'll have fun on dating apps because the body has needs, but I don't think I'm after anything serious anymore. I'm relatively old and don't desire children, and maybe not having a woman in my life will bring the simplicity and peace I've longed for. Life without Daphne has been challenging, but it has also allowed me to focus on myself, my hobbies, and my mental health. The prospect of starting a new relationship is daunting, but for the time being, I'm taking things slowly. I've been spending more time with friends who stood by me and supported me throughout the divorce. I also resumed therapy to process everything and ensure that I was on the path to recovery. It is not an easy journey, but I am committed to it. The betrayal caused deep emotional wounds that will take time to heal. Suppose anyone reading this is going through something similar. In that case, I'd like to offer some advice based on my experience. Prioritize your mental health and seek professional assistance as needed. Therapy has been a lifesaver for me. Surround yourself with supportive people. Friends and family who truly care about you can make a huge difference. Be honest but respectful. While I don't regret exposing the truth about Daphne, handling such situations with as much grace as possible is important. Take your time. Healing from betrayal and a messy divorce is a process. Allow yourself time and space to grieve and recover. Focus on self-improvement. Use this time to pursue your interests, learn new skills, and improve yourself. It can be gratifying and therapeutic. I'm still finding my way, but life can be rewarding even after such a significant setback. To anyone who's been hurt, remember that you have the strength to move forward and find happiness again, even if it looks different from what you once imagined. That's fine with me anyway. I hope that if you choose to, you will meet women. I can believe in love forever because I know they're out there. Still, I'm not ready to take the risk and find any of it. First and foremost, I commend you for taking charge of your situation and navigating the emotional minefield that was your last post. It's no small feat to bear. Your soul is like that, and it's great to hear that you found the support you needed. So in the showdown with Daphne scene, you handled it like a seasoned pro bluff regarding the private investigator genius. Lo and behold, she admitted to 3 affairs honestly. Wow, she was pleading and begging. While you stood firm, it is sad to see how things turned out, but it is clear there. There was no salvaging the relationship, knew what you were worth and didn't settle for it. The divorce is less commendable. The proceedings sounded harsh to you. Mental health is brought into the spotlight. It is disheartening to see how your struggles were weaponized against you. However, it's a relief to know that things mostly went in your favor, so keep the car, leave the apartment and everything. Having bad memories sounds like smart. Your post-divorce move involved bold and brilliant, telling everyone the truth about Daphne. That's a masterclass. Sure, she made public service announcements. I wasn't happy, and that epic 10-minute curse-out was probably expected. Still, you stood your ground and ensured the people around you knew the real story. Thank you for watching and supporting my journey. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm on a mission to achieve 1,000 subscribers, but first I must reach 100. Help me reach my goal by hitting the subscribe button and sharing this video with your friends. Your support means everything to me. See you in the next video.